We will be exploring prompt engineering inside ChatGPT in this video. We are going to learn about 4 different types of prompting techniques: zero-shot prompt engineering, role prompt engineering, few-shot prompt engineering, and chain prompt engineering. As we work through each prompting technique, notice how each technique helps elicit specific responses from large language models, i.e. ChatGPT. I want to explain the basics of prompting before diving into each technique. It will help us learn how to write for ChatGPT and other large language models. Therefore, I want to begin by deconstructing 3 basic prompts into the 4 components of a prompt: task, input, output, and context. Now here is the first basic prompt I want to deconstruct into the 4 components. Summarize this article about renewable energy sources. And below that, I'm going to place an article placeholder in between triple quotations. If we had an article, we would paste it below the prompt inside triple quotes or hashtags. The OpenAI documentation recommends this to separate instruction and context. Now, this prompt can be deconstructed into the 4 components of a prompt as follows. Number 1, task. Summarize this article. 2, input. The article on renewable energy sources, which we will be able to see here. 3, output. A summary of the article. 4, context. None in this prompt. Now comes the second basic prompt that I want to deconstruct. Classify this news article as either sports or politics. And we will place a placeholder for the article below that, and that will be inside triple quotations. So again, if we had an article or headline, we will paste it below the prompt inside triple quotes or hashtags. OpenAI recommends this to separate instruction and context. Here is the prompt deconstructed. 1, task. Classify this news article. 2, input. The article or headline to classify. 3, output. Either a sports or politics label. 4, context. Again, none in this prompt. I hope that the components forming a prompt are now becoming familiar. The majority of prompts follow this or a similar structure. Here is the final basic prompt I want to deconstruct before the prompting techniques. Translate this sentence from English to French. And again, below that, inside triple quotations, I will put a placeholder for the input. If we had a sentence, we will paste it below the prompt inside the triple quotes or hashtags. Again, OpenAI recommends this to separate instruction and context. Here is the prompt deconstructed. 1, task. Translate this sentence. 2, input. The sentence to translate. 3, output. The translated sentence. 4, context. Again, none in this prompt, but a conversation thread where previous sentences also need translating could be considered context. We have now deconstructed the 3 basic prompts, and more importantly, we understand how prompts are constructed to elicit specific responses from ChatGPT. Clear writing is the foundational skill underpinning all of those and every other prompt. The output of a prompt is correlated with the clearness of the prose in the prompt. Be as specific as required, and start prompts with instructions, not context. That is how we can increase the probability of an accurate output. Responses from large language models should still not be trusted blindly. Verify the response. That is especially true of critical information. We will now cover the first of 4 prompting techniques, zero-shot prompting. Zero-shot prompting is considered one of the most basic prompting techniques, but it is still powerful because of the breadth of training data that went into ChatGPT. I'm going to explain zero-shot prompting by deconstructing 2 examples. I will deconstruct them as we did previously into the 4 components of a prompt: task, input, output, and context. Here is the first zero-shot prompt I want to deconstruct into the components. Create a list of 10 books similar to 1984 by George Orwell. ChatGPT will output some fantastic suggestions in seconds. Here is the prompt deconstructed. 1. Task. Create a list of 10 books similar to 1984. 2. Input. None in this prompt. 3. Output. A list of 10 books. 4. Context. None. However, mentioning George Orwell could be classed as context. That is because we are directing ChatGPT towards 1984 by George Orwell, thus minimizing errors whereby there is a book of a similar title. Now comes the second zero-shot prompt that I want to deconstruct. Convert the output into a table. Column 1 for index, column 2 for title, column 3 for author, column 4 for book description, and column 5 for emoji related to the book. ChatGPT will now transform its previous output into a table format. Here is the prompt deconstructed. 1. Task. Convert the output into a table. 2. Input the previous output, i.e. the list of 10 books similar to 1984. 3. Output a table with 5 columns populated using the previous output. 4. Context. None in this prompt. We have now covered zero-shot prompt engineering. Now we can discuss the second of 4 prompting techniques, role prompting. Role prompting is a technique whereby we can get a large language model, i.e. ChatGPT, to act as a fictional or non-fictional character. We can even get it to act as a thing, i.e. the terminal on a machine. Role prompting is a valuable technique to deploy when our goals require more consistent outputs. I'm going to explain role prompting by deconstructing 2 examples. I will deconstruct them as we did previously into the 4 components of a prompt: task, input, output, and context. Here is the first role prompt that I want to deconstruct into the components. Act as a Mac terminal. I will type commands. You will reply with the output from the terminal. Outputs should be inside code blocks. Do not write explanations. ChatGPT will now understand the role we want it to play. Now we will enter the second role prompt with ChatGPT acting as a terminal. curl wttr.in/Paris. WTTR is a free console-orientated weather forecast service, And we will see that ChatGPT recognizes this and mimics a real terminal with its output. Here are the two prompts we entered, deconstructed in one. 1. Task. The task is in the first prompt, i.e., act as a Mac terminal. 2. Input. The input is in the second prompt, i.e., curl wttr.in/Paris. 3. Output. This is again in the first prompt, i.e., output should be inside code blocks. 4. Context. Both prompts we entered serve as the context for future outputs. We will now enter two final role prompts, but we will not deconstruct these. The first of the final two role prompts is the following: curl wttr.in/greenhorn. Greenhorn is a fictional place. ChatGPT is aware of that and therefore does not return any data. That demonstrates the power of context in prompt engineering. The final role prompt is the following: rewrite the previous output in the style of Darth Vader. It is a fun prompt which demonstrates how ChatGPT uniquely adjusts its role. We have now covered role prompt engineering. Now we can discuss the third of four prompting techniques, few-shot prompting. Few-shot prompting expands the capabilities of zero-shot prompting. Few-shot prompting is helpful when we need to guide ChatGPT or another large language model towards more specific outputs using examples. I'm going to explain few-shot prompting by deconstructing two examples. I will deconstruct them as we did previously into the four components of a prompt: task, input, output, and context. Here is the first few-shot prompt I want to deconstruct into the components. Assign a sentiment to the texts with no sentiment in between brackets. I will label the first three. Output all strings of text. Do not provide an explanation. Below that, inside triple quotes, I will enter the strings of text. The few-shot prompt is evident in the sentiment labels we have and have not provided. We provide the first three. We then leave the final two blank and nudge ChatGPT to learn what we want to achieve. This is how a few-shot prompt works. We provide some guidance. The model, i.e. ChatGPT, then outputs what we are trying to achieve. Here is the prompt deconstructed. 1. Task. Assign a sentiment to the texts with no sentiment in between brackets. 2. Input. The inputs are the 5 strings that we provided, 3 of which we labeled. 3. Output. Output all strings of text. 4. Context. The context in this prompt is the 3 strings of text we labeled. This was a basic example of a few-shot prompt. ChatGPT will likely have been able to assign labels without the context, but providing context becomes more important when working with unique data that ChatGPT is unfamiliar with. Now comes the final few-shot prompt that I want to deconstruct. Assign a sentiment reliability score to each string of text. Convert the output into a JSON file. Key 1 for index, key 2 for text, key 3 for sentiment, key 4 for score. Output the JSON file inside a code block with no explanations. This few-shot prompt first assigns a reliability score to the sentiment labels, and it then converts the data into a JSON file. Here is the prompt deconstructed. 1. Task. There are 2 tasks in this prompt. The first is to assign a sentiment reliability score to each string of text, and the second is to output the JSON file inside a code block with no explanations. 2. Input. The input for this prompt is the previous output from ChatGPT. ChatGPT remembers the conversation in the current chat. Each chat is like a brain. 3. Output. We instruct ChatGPT to output a JSON file with our defined keys. 4. Context. None in this prompt. ChatGPT becomes more powerful when we incorporate few-shot prompting. We have now covered few-shot prompt engineering. Now we can discuss the final prompting technique, chain prompting. Chain prompting is a technique that involves creating a sequence of prompts. It is useful when we are trying to generate detailed outputs. Chain prompting can also incorporate other techniques like role prompting. I'm going to explain chain prompting by deconstructing 5 examples. I will deconstruct them as we did previously into the 4 components of a prompt: task, input, output, and context. Here is the first chain prompt I want to deconstruct into the components. Write an outline for a blog post about visiting Paris (France) in December. ChatGPT will return an excellent foundation for the blog post in seconds. This is the first prompt in the sequence of 5 that we will create. And here is the prompt deconstructed. 1. Task. Write an outline for a blog post. 2. Input. The input is where we mention the topic, i.e., visiting Paris, France in December. 3. Output. We instruct the prompt to provide us with an outline for a blog post. 4. Context. None in this prompt. Now comes the second chain prompt that I want to deconstruct. Shorten the outline to key points. ChatGPT will condense the outline to the key points in seconds. Here is the prompt deconstructed. 1. Task. Shorten the outline. 2. Input. The input is the outline previously generated by ChatGPT. 3. Output. We want ChatGPT to provide us a shorter outline. 4. Context. The previous output by ChatGPT is the context in this situation. We can now enter the third chain prompt that I want to deconstruct. Write 1 paragraph for the introduction. We will now see ChatGPT write an introduction using the outline it generated. And here is the prompt deconstructed. 1. Task. Write 1 paragraph. 2. Input. The shorter outline which ChatGPT generated serves as the input here. 3. Output. We want 1 paragraph for the introduction, not multiple. For context, again, the previous output by ChatGPT is the context in this situation. We have now created a sequence of 3 prompts. Here is the 4th chain prompt I want to deconstruct. Condense the introduction paragraph using shorter sentences. The previous introduction that ChatGPT wrote seems too wordy, and that is why we created this prompt. We want ChatGPT to improve its own writing, and here is the prompt deconstructed. 1. Task. Condense the introduction paragraph. 2. Input. The input for this prompt is the introduction paragraph ChatGPT generated. 3. Output. We want ChatGPT to improve the introduction paragraph. 4. Context. Again, the previous output is the context. We can now enter the final chain prompt I want to deconstruct. Write 1 short paragraph about my company. Inside brackets and inside triple quotations, historical walkers. I offer walking tours inside triple quotations for $40. This paragraph will go after the introduction paragraph. Use the ADA in brackets, attention, interest, desire, and action, copywriting formula. ChatGPT will now generate a paragraph using the unique information we provided, i.e. company name and pricing. This paragraph we can then use in the blog post. Here is the prompt deconstructed. 1. Task. Write 1 short paragraph about my company. 2. Input. We provide unique information in this prompt, i.e. company name and pricing. 3. Output. We want ChatGPT to provide a captivating paragraph using ADA. 4. Context. Again, the previous output is the context. I will not walk through the remainder of the blog post. It would be repetitive, but I would repeat what I have demonstrated to complete the blog post. We have now covered chain prompt engineering, and that means we have covered all 4 of the prompting techniques: zero-shot prompt engineering, role prompt engineering, few-shot prompt engineering, and chain prompt engineering. There are many ways we can use these techniques. We can use them professionally and non-professionally, but there is only so much we can learn by watching videos. It is time to deploy these techniques wherever assistance is required.